Hi, I am Ananda, a U.S. immigration lawyer. Last time, I talked about the K-1 visa process and eligibility requirements. Today, I will be discussing the timeline of the K-1 petition and the K-1 visa application process. Timeline of the K-1 visa process. The timeline of the visa process spans from the pre-filing, which is the preparation and gathering of the documents, then the USCIS stage where the I-129F form is filed, then the NVC stage after the I-129F petition is approved, then the US Embassy or Consulate stage where the interview is done. Now let's elaborate. Pre-filing. Depending on the simplicity or complexity of one's case, gathering and preparation of documents, including the preparation of forms for filing, could take as fast as 1 week to a year or more. Examples of cases which could take longer to prepare include waiting for the finality of a divorce decree or waiting for a copy issued by a court where you had a criminal disposition of prior criminal history. And sometimes it's just procrastination, not knowing what to get. Next, filing and pendency of the petition. Upon the filing of the I-129F petition, it could take 6 months to 15 months, depending on the service center processing the petition. The California Service Center being notoriously longer according to USCIS page to check processing times. But take note, there is no guarantee of these timelines. The case could take shorter or longer to process on a case-by-case basis, and also it depends if there is no request for evidence. If USCIS issues a request for evidence, also known as an RFE, then it could add at least 30 days to the petition or the process. So USCIS issues an RFE usually if they are not satisfied with the evidence presented with the petition. For example, the petitioner answered that they have a criminal history in the petition, but failed to provide documentary evidence. So USCIS would issue an RFE. So if these documents are available, good. But most of the time, the petitioner needs to request for certified copies of their criminal record, and it could add up. And that would be an additional of at least 30 days or 1 month to the process. Now let's talk about approval. So after the case is approved by USCIS, they send it to the National Visa Center or the NVC. The NVC processes the approved petition to transition it to the US Department of State, to the US Embassy or Consulate, where the interview will take place. This may take 2 to 3 months. Next, the US Embassy or Consulate stage. The US Embassy or Consulate will contact the foreign national for interview. The foreign national beneficiary himself or herself need to schedule a visa interview appointment and the medical examination schedule. The timeline of this is dependent on the US Embassy's speed. Sometimes a certain embassy has a specific step that applies only to that embassy, so that could add up. This stage is also dependent on the readiness of the beneficiary when it comes to scheduling and, of course, the documentary evidence. Do they have the evidence required for the interview, such as birth certificate, police certificate? Specifically, these police certificates, some need to obtain this from other countries they have lived for at least 6 months from the age of 16. So this stage would depend on the visa interview schedule availability as well, specific to a US embassy or consulate, which sometimes takes months to get. And another factor is the availability of schedule and how fast the medical examination appointment takes. For other beneficiaries, they might have to undergo more medical testing, so that is an additional time. So overall and roughly, this process could take as fast as 2 or 4 weeks or more. However, take note that the I-129F petition is valid for 4 months from the approval by USCIS, so it is crucial to respond or to take action in scheduling the interview, assuming that the beneficiary was diligent, but just because of circumstances in the availability of the scheduling, the visa processing has not completed before the 4-month mark. Well, the US Embassy or Consulate or a consular officer could extend its validity. Assuming all goes well, this process could take at least a month or more. Now let's talk about after the interview. After the K-visa interview, if approved, the waiting time for the receipt of the passport with a K-1 visa stamp from the interview date to having the visa on hand could take 3 weeks. It could be faster, but just know that there is no guarantee until you receive that passport with a stamp. This is very important because others book their flight before receiving their passport, and this could cost a lot. After the beneficiary receives that visa, he or she must enter the US within the validity period of the K-1 visa. So it could be as soon as the visa was received or close to the end of its validity, which is usually 6 months. So this depends on the person. Sometimes they want to stay and enjoy more, or others want to come as soon as possible after a long period of separation, right? Now, as a final note, the timelines are estimates based on the published processing times and the real K-1 cases. Do not think that it's absolute because it could change, and USCIS could change their processing times, and even circumstances change. So the timeline could really vary from one petition to the other. If you want to learn more about the K-1 visa process and other immigration benefits, please follow us or subscribe to the channel. See you next time!